and even allowed me to pivot and discover a whole new world of publishing, of speaking,
Yes.
of helping people get to the C-suite. All of that happened in my magical middle.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials.
Now, here's your host, Adrion Porter.
Welcome to another episode of Gen X Amplified. As you know, I'm your host, Adrion Porter, and I have to tell you, today's conversation has been a long time coming. I mean, I've been watching this woman work. I've been watching her build. I've been watching her impact leaders at the highest level. And not only that, she actually invited me into her world in a very meaningful way, which we're going to get into today. So my guest is a best-selling, award-winning author, a Fortune 100 C-suite advisor, and a certified global executive coach who has spent over 25 years helping leaders do the deep, transformational work that actually moves the needle. Now, she is the founder and CEO of No Silos Communications and the creator and host of the Culture Soup podcast. But right now, she is on a mission because her brand new book, Call and Response, 10 Leadership Lessons from the Black Church, published, by the way, by Amistad, HarperCollins, in collaboration with JVL Media. You know, that company that's co-partnered by the Academy Award-winning actress, EGOT, the incredible Viola Davis, is already a bestseller. So without further ado, please welcome a leader, a scholar, and a storyteller who is operating at the very apex of science, culture, and heart-centered leadership, the magnificent, the masterful, the mighty L. Michelle Smith. L. Michelle, welcome to Gen X Amplified.
Thank you so much, Adrian. What an introduction. You know, you made me feel good there. That was good.
Well, you know what? You should feel good. You should feel
Thank
good.
you.
You should feel
I
good because
appreciate that.
this is a long time coming. And first of all, I am honored not only to have you on the show, but also to call you a friend,
Yes,
a
you are my friend.
colleague, someone who just happened to, I don't know why, put me in this book. But we're going to talk about it a lot more today. But Elle, thank you for joining me so much.
Of course, you know, some of the leaders that are in the book,
Yes.
you just exude church boy. And many of them, I hadn't even asked about their background. I just said, will you be in the book?
Right.
Because I just already knew.
Yeah, I'm definitely a church boy, and you know, people who read the book can definitely tell. But you know, this isn't about me. It's about the book, and I'm in the book, so I'm very honored. I'm gonna make sure I get that out the way. Let's you know, as I like to do with Gen X Amplify, let's take it a step back.
Okay.
Let's take a back down memory lane, like Minnie Riperton would say.
All right.
So, Michelle, can you just talk a little bit about your journey, your story, and what led you to put pen to paper, fingernails to keyboard over and over and over again as a best-selling author? Can you talk about your past and those stories that led you to this moment?
Yes, and it's funny that you mentioned Minnie Riperton because there are actually two stories that led to this book.
Okay.
One I've told over and over again, and it had to do with me speaking. But I'm going to tell you the other story, and it's how the book starts out. I stumbled on this photograph.
See,
Okay.
I'm a music junkie, so she got that lyric. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. It didn't make me laugh. It did make me go, wow.
Wow.
Because I was with my daughter. It was the eve of Thanksgiving at my folks' house, and we live in the same city. So it wasn't like we had to go very far to get there, but I was relaxed because I was finally on holiday, you know, putting down work. My mom eases into the room with this black and white photograph very calmly and just hands it to me. And it was a picture of my former pastor, childhood pastor, the Reverend C.A.W. Clark, some young women that looked very much like the grandmothers of my peers, and a very young Martin Luther King Jr. And of course,
wow.
I gasped.
I'm sure you did.
Where did you get this? I wanted to know the story.
Right.
And she was still calm. She just turned to my dad and said, James, where did we get this from? And I'm like, what? You know, ultimately, when my pastor passed away, As people do.
Right.
There were mementos around the office and someone handed them this photo. But
Okay.
what was going on in the photo was much deeper than it appeared. It looked
Okay.
like they had finished up a dinner honoring their guest. MLK had come to Dallas for the first time. He
Okay.
would come 3 times in his life, but he came for the first time on the invitation of my pastor, who at the time was pretty prominent in the National Baptist Convention USA. Now, this is 1956. So think about that historical context. Within 3 years, a bomb was going to go off and kill 4 little Black girls in Birmingham, Alabama. So it was tense times. And Martin Luther King Jr. was not people's favorite person. Can we just tell the truth here?
We can definitely tell the truth. A lot of people don't know that, but
Yeah.
but let's unpack it a little bit.
We celebrate him today, but back then he was very, very controversial.
Correct.
Not just for folks that don't look like us, but for people who do.
Right.
And my pastor was the only pastor brave enough to invite MLK into his pulpit to preach. It would be the only pulpit in Dallas-Fort Worth where he actually got to preach. Now, you may be saying, well, why was that controversial? Again, he wasn't well liked. In fact, there was a target on him, and people were afraid. Churches were being bombed. His house had been bombed by then. And so it was a threat to have MLK. And then also, people knew back then that he was being tracked by the government. So does that make you a target too? My pastor said, okay, whatever, come preach. And to me, that was an extraordinary example of courage, and the kind of courage that we saw him and others in my church exude by example. So it was as much about me discovering that my speaking abilities came from a young child at 14 teaching adult Sunday school, or even leading the adult mass choir when I was 12 years old.
Woo!
Singing.
Uh-oh. So you should have said that. I may have you sing on this episode. You made
It's in the book. It's in the book. But it was very much about the role models and the people that we saw,
right,
and just took in what we saw at a young age all the way up through young adulthood.
No, I love it. So when you're going through all these stories, and we're talking about the church, we're talking about Martin Luther King, and as you know, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
Which, we're talking about historical moments and unhappy historical moments. Unfortunately, April 4th, that city, my city, has that stain on it, which will never be washed. But I remember all those conversations. I remember being in Memphis, being in church. I have a lot of family who are pastors, obviously, and that's in the book as well. And so that's what's so great about this book, which we're going to get to even more in a moment, is that you talked about your journey. I asked you to talk about your journey, which led you to this moment, and a lot of it was rooted in the church.
Absolutely.
And that's where it's important for all of us to understand those previous chapters and how important the church is. Now, I mentioned in the intro your company, what you do professionally. You do write books, but you also impact others. You were a VP, or you made VP before, I think, 30 years old,
right,
and SVP before 40, and you ran your agency. Can you just take us back to some of those, what I call magical moments, and those critical moments, and how you felt during those tentpole moments in your life?
Yeah. So the first moment you mentioned was making VP before I was 30.
Yes.
That was around the year 2002. The year before that was 2001.
Yes.
And we all know what happened then.
Yeah, exactly.
9/11. And I was working on a little known wireless account at Ketchum Public Relations that people may remember. It's called Singular Wireless.
Ooh, I remember Singular
At the time,
Wireless.
it was called Nuco.
Yes.
Because it was spun out from SBC and Bell South.
Right.
But my team was charged with, along with another group of folks across the country, to launch that brand into the ether. But we had 9/11, and much like the pandemic caused people to really think about what it was that they were doing in their lives, and rethinking life, and trying to get more focused on what they'd want to do. About the time that I got promoted, I got the hankering to do something else, and I wasn't sure what that was. And at first, I just knew that quitting was probably part of it.
Okay.
I just didn't know what would be after that.
Yes.
And talking to my SVP during that time, she kind of sensed that something was going on with me. I, at the time, was leading and shepherding all of the CEOs when it came to media training. So I was training them how to show up and speak like we do today. Yes. And show up and be on camera like I do today.
You do it well.
And as an ex-journalist, it came very naturally to me. So that's what I was doing. And my boss at the time was like, well, are you thinking about leaving? I was like, that's a really harsh word. I said, I'm kind of thinking of freelancing, but not really sure where to start. And she was so gracious. And she said, well, you can start right here. You can continue to work with those CEOs, keep your office, you know. Do you have an office? I was like, yeah, I actually have a little studio over here that I'm going to be leasing some space out of, doing some media training. She's like, well, come here 2-3 days a week, leave your artwork up. I mean, it was unheard of. But we were already going through a recession and laying off people because the tech bust had happened. And she wanted her VPs to look like they were populating the office. We were a small office too. So it helped to have me around. And during that time is when I met Alelia Bundles, who's also in the book. And I also started work for Valerie Burton, who's one of the blurbs on the back of the book.
Yes, Valerie Burton.
See how all of this kind of comes
the
together?
great Valerie Burton. Yes.
Yes. And so those were my first 2 clients. As I started to freelance, I was still working for those CEOs under the Ketchum name, but I wasn't on payroll. I was a contractor. But I had my sea legs. I was getting them out there and trying to feel my way around. And I started with authors. And I felt like it was a real blessing to get Alelia Bundles because I knew who she was. I knew who she was as an ABC producer and talent development director. She was Carol Simpson's producer. And Carol was the one that sent me her way. And she said, well, maybe you can help her out. I thought maybe she needed positioning for her next network move. No, this lady said, I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. Right?
Yes.
I'm like, you're kidding me. You said this so calmly. She already had her book On Her Own Ground, which of course was revamped and became the Netflix series Self-Made.
Right. Yes.
But back then she didn't have any press for her book. So it was my job to help her get that. And it was also my job to help Valerie get some national exposure too, as a coach. Wow. She didn't like to call herself coach. So we repositioned her. We called her a life strategist, you know, before coaching was a thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
So anyway, you're getting the feel that I spent a lot of time in strategic comms. And that was about the time that I got enough business because my SVP started getting notices from her clients that they needed to downsize and cut budget. And her whole deal was, if we can't hold on to this client because we can't afford it anymore, let's keep it in the family. So she started sending me whole accounts. Oh, wow. So I had to staff up.
That's great.
So I incorporated, I started payroll. I hired my first millennials. The millennials came and worked for me and I understood them. I loved them.
Yes.
And I had a couple of Gen Xers and boomers that were the seasoned folks in the place. And one of my biggest clients was Church's Chicken. You know, they're right out of Atlanta.
Yes.
Right. Yes. We had a lot of beauty clients out of Chicago, which if you listen to me, you're going to figure out, gosh, that's why she planned her tour the way she did.
Yes.
I have a lot of roots in those cities. And so that was an inflection point for me going from big agency. I mean, I got my facial and my nails done almost like every week. Like, you know, housekeeper was taking care of the place and driving a nice car. I was single and didn't have any bills. All that was happening when I decide I'm going to go off on my own. The math was mathing. So
wow.
I did it.
Wow.
I did it with 2 paychecks in the bank. Ill-advised. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay.
It worked out for me, but.
Okay. Oh, wow. Well, thank you for that. I remember those days that, you know, I talk about all the time, my journey from corporate to what I do now with speaking and consulting. And it's a journey, you know, it can be an eye-wakener, if you will, the comforts of corporate. But so you talked a lot about leadership in your journey. Let's dig more into leadership. Let's dig into this beauty right here. For those who are listening to the podcast, you can't see me, but I am holding up a grand book called Call to Response. So brightly nice and orange and colors. So walk us through, Michelle, the call and response revival framework. It's built on 3 pillars, I believe, was history and culture, applied science, and leadership theory.
Yes.
How do those work together? Like, how did you come up with that? And just talk about that at a macro level first.
Well, first of all, so everyone is level set. This is not a religious text. Even though it says the word church on it, it's not religious. I'm not trying to give you Jesus. Maybe in a different context, I might, but not in this book.
Got it.
It is also not just for Black folks. You see the word Black on the cover, you see some Black folks. It's not just for Black folks. In the context of the other books that I've written, I like to compare the subtitles. So in the first 2 books, and then there was a journal, the subtitle said "For Women of Color."
Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Can you please state the titles of your books as well? Because people are listening.
So no thanks.
Got it.
7 ways to say I'll just include myself.
Okay.
And in the subhead, it was Rockstar Leadership Tips or something for women of color. Also in the second book, the follow-up to that one, because they're in a series, it's called Yes Please, 7 ways to say I'm entitled to the C-suite. And again, in the subtitle, it says for women of color.
Got it.
This subtitle says from the Black church.
That's right.
From
the Black church.
That's the key word.
From.
That's the key word.
Yes, from.
So it originates from the Black church as a cultural institution. And where X is the cultural institution, you can fill in other cultural institutions. Right? The second pillar that you mentioned was applied science. In those other 2 books, I was learning in my coach training, in my continued education, positive psychology and neuroscience. Positive psychology shows up first in No Thanks. And it's different the way I leverage the science in these books. In No Thanks and Yes Please, I leverage it as one more way to show proof of how to make it through the leadership pipeline, okay? Whether it's just trying to get promoted, which is really what the first book is about. No Thanks is about finding out who you are, discovering who you are, aligning with your values, knowing that you are a child of God, fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you deserve to go as high up as anyone else. And how to endure some of the things that the challenges that women of color face. The next one, well, I should say, the second edition of the first one, because there are 2 editions of that.
Okay.
One actually was called the Remix, and it was 2/3 more content that I added to the book. And that's where I started to gently introduce the neuroscience with the positive psychology. Positive psychology shows up very basically in both of those books as affirmations. I do quote some of the science throughout about happiness triggers, about peace builders, understanding how your brain interacts with these positive emotions. That's really highlighted in Yes Please. And you're using the science as a tool in those books. In this book, I'm using the science as a tool. I'm taking the culture and the history, and I'm saying, that seems like something that might help a leader out, i.e. courage, i.e. grit. And then I take the neuroscience and the positive psychology as a filter, as a test, and I test out those theories in order to get leadership theory that you'd find in Harvard Business Review. So that's a really cool thing to know that my grandmother, if she's singing Mahalia Jackson in her little wood frame house in Arkansas back in the day, and she's singing, I'm going to lay down my burdens down by the riverside to study war no more. That hope theory is embedded in all of that. And hope is this gateway to resilience, and that she was rewiring her brain. So now we have language to talk about to the world. Things that we knew in the Black church were helping us spiritually, but maybe didn't know that it was helping us to become Fortune 500 CEOs.
I love it. Wow. So, thank you so much. And you know that I'm a science nerd as well. And a lot of what I focus on in my framework, neuroscience, narrative identity. So I've been following you. We've been friends, we've been colleagues, co-workers through ELC and other things. And I noticed that has always been a through line with you, is making sure that you emphasize not only the art, but also the science. And I
Yeah.
think what's so refreshing in your approach, not just with this book, and I've read your previous books, that's been consistent, but it gets, each book, each iteration, gets a little louder, it gets a little more relevant to that context. And so you mentioned this earlier. We were talking about the title of the book, and you made it a point that this is not a faith-based leadership book.
Right.
Why was that distinction so important to you from the outset?
Well, it's one thing to speak inside the club with everybody who's a part of the club. We have our own churchyisms. We know things about our faith that other people don't.
Right.
And for those folks who aren't of that experience, they needed to be able to relate to what I was saying. This applied science was a really great way to do it.
Right.
Because we knew that this research already existed, but no one had connected the dots. And we also know that there was credibility in this research. And, I've actually gotten overtures and direct recruitment to PhD programs because of this book.
Ooh.
And I've told them, hey, thank you. That's really kind and it's very flattering.
Yes.
But my master's degree is enough for me right now because my job as someone who is a scholar, but at the master's level, is to connect the dots between the research that's already there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that hasn't happened in our realm as Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of us that are in the club,
right,
we typically have books and advice from mentors that is experiential, which is valid. It is a very valid way to get good insight on your leadership journey, but it's not what Jim has. And Jim, if you haven't figured out who he is,
yes,
he's up in the ivory tower, all the way up in the 25th floor,
right,
with his many executive coaches like me,
yes,
credentialed,
yes,
who are helping him work to do the work that he does. And for so many of us, that's been invisible. And we thought Jim was doing it all by himself. And I decided to be the tea spiller. I would go in and get educated just like these coaches, and then come out and start spilling tea to my people so that they would actually have the same tools. Jim didn't just have the experience of his mentors. He had science-backed, evidence-backed tools.
Right.
So in those first two books and the journal, you will see us using these sciences as tools.
Right.
But in call and response, while it's definitely, you could use it as a tool, it's also a measuring stick and something that gives us language to describe something that we can all actually look at now and not just know based on intuition or cultural insights.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And I asked that question. We've had this conversation before because I know this definitely is it's a leadership book, it's a business book, it's a personal growth book. It's not necessarily a religious book. And I know it's out in Barnes and Noble and all the major bookstores. And it's in the business section.
You've seen them too,
or at least it should be in the business.
Y'all.
I'm always out in the wild. And then when I have friends
sends me the pictures, I just love it. He's like, look, here it is.
Look,
I appreciate it because in the first 30 days, I haven't been able to go anywhere outside of my book tour.
No, I understand. I'm always out in the bookstores, and then I have friends who are authors. I take pictures in the wild, and if it's in the wrong spot, I look around and I move it and shift it. And
Thank
sure
you.
that it's, but going back to that, I'm just curious because as a creator, as someone who is developing and maximizing others' impact, and now going into, because of the title, I'm just curious, was there any hesitancy initially with going here, making the church language so overt that you be in fear that it would pigeonhole you into
Would it be wrong to say hell no?
No, it would be, let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
I have been treading this path for quite some time. In fact, in the very beginning of the book, I referenced some research that I did while I was at AT&T with my teams for a campaign that, can you see him? Let's see. I don't know if you can see him right now. Can you see him?
Yeah, in the back.
You can't really see him right now.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, it's Reverend Run. It's Joseph Reverend Simmons who's behind me.
Yeah, I think we know who he is. Yeah.
This campaign almost didn't see the light of day. It's called Inspired Mobility.
Love it.
Okay.
Yep.
And when we first came up with the insight, and this is what you'll figure out about me even my marketing and integrated marketing campaigns
Yes.
always start with data. Always start with data. We do the research. We know kind of what we're looking for, but we pull the insights from the research.
Right.
Then we build a campaign. You're a marketer, you know.
Yeah.
We wanted to find out how people were using their wireless phones in their lives to stay connected with the things they loved. One of the overwhelming things that we found, and by the way, that campaign was built on the same chassis as It Can Wait. Don't Text and Drive, award-winning. Yeah, I worked on that team too. But we wanted to find out how people were using their wireless phones to connect with the things they love. That include people, interests, content, whatever. We found a huge aha moment that people were connecting with their faith. And so originally the campaign was called Faith 2.0, but we got all sorts of pushback. You know, we're corporate, we don't talk about faith. And this kind of comes up in the book, right? You can be your faith-driven person in corporate because in a lot of good companies, it aligns with their mission, their values, you know, all of this good stuff, but don't talk about it. Okay. Don't talk about it.
Right.
So we took it to the higher ups. I got a lot of feedback from officers and we took it to them. And a lot of them were like, no, we can't do that. I took it to the brand team and I said, test it out. Does it work? They took it, they kept it for like 2-3 weeks and they stress tested and they said, this can work. And let us tell you how it could work. We have to broaden the term. Instead of saying Faith 2.0, let's say inspiration. Let's build on that word because it includes everybody, even if you're not of faith.
Right.
So ultimately, Inspired Mobility was born. And within that research, we went on with further research. We found out we wanted to start with the Black community. And then we wanted to dovetail because I was working on a concept then called inclusion marketing. I was one of the forefathers of all of that, foremothers. Anyway, ultimately, the idea was that you took a cultural insight that resonated across demographics, but it was nuanced enough for one group. And because we knew that Black culture drove pop culture, we started with the Black community. So that's how we end up with Rev Run because he cuts across all of that stuff.
Yeah, he does.
Faith, not faith,
Right.
Black, white. When they did Walk This Way,
Yeah.
all the middle-aged white men are like, Rev, run DMC, you know?
You see, we know we Gen X, so we remember
Yes.
that. Yes, come on.
So
now.
one of those insights was that the church was the original social network. And that's the nugget that shows up in this book. I took it a step further and found out that the church was the original business school.
The original business school. Yeah, I noticed that line, and I love the line, by the way. And it's so, Elle, you know, you're taking me back a little bit. You're talking about your experience with AT&T and Singular, because I don't know if I shared with you. So, you know, I worked at HBO for about 5 years through 2003 through 2008, and part during that time I was marketing. We had launched HBO Mobile, and our partner was Singular Wireless, and then it transitioned to AT&T. But then that was pre-smartphone, so I'm talking the earlier days. So
they were doing Blackberries at that point.
Yes, so we had HBO content, Sopranos, Sex and the City, The Wire, and we started. It's totally different than HBO Max, but I was part of the launch team of HBO Mobile as far as marketing. So you're taking me back from one former corporate marketer to another. Going back
it's that time frame, isn't it?
It is such interesting. So let's dig more into my lane, how my lane and your lane intersect in this podcast, because a big part of the Gen X Amplified audience are mid-career professionals or professionals in the middle of their journey. So not necessarily thinking mid-career as far as level, but people who are navigating what I like to call the magical middle, which is my reframe from the messy middle. Leaders, they have deep experience, great insights, wisdom, but they're also facing a lot of disruptions, particularly like AI, multi-generational workplace teams, shifting dynamics, and questioning their purpose, and they're questioning their legacy. How does your book, Call and Response, your book, your platform, what you do, speak directly about where individuals who are navigating that magical middle right now? How does that speak to them?
You know, it's interesting because as I look at the individuals that I interviewed for the book, there are about 12 of them that show up, the leaders that tell their stories, you included. All but maybe 2 of them are Gen X. The other 2 are boomers.
Yes.
But you would argue that they're probably cuspers, right on the edge.
Right on the edge, yes.
But Trudy Bourgeois actually tells a story about the Jim Crow South. So she actually is boomer,
Yeah.
material.
Right.
But all that to be said, as I think about these interviews that I had with people, and even as I unfurled my story, because there are parts of my story that I hadn't really just dug into until I did, it was so moving. It brought so many people to tears because what they discovered was something that was so much a part of their being, so much a part of who they were, that they had pressed down. They used every day.
Yes.
But they pressed it down because, again, you don't talk about it in corporate. You just don't talk about religion in corporate. You just don't do it.
Right.
And you pressed it down because when it's the Black church, some people malign the Black church. They think, oh, it's old fashioned. It's just a bunch of old people.
Yes.
It doesn't take all that. It's too emotional. All of these things are bottled up into this one institution that causes people who actually got something from it that was productive and creative and meaningful in their life. They pressed it down so far that when I approached them about doing these interviews they didn't know about the scaffolding and the framework. They didn't know about any of that stuff. I just said, tell your story. Their first thing they wanted to do was talk about Easter speeches. And that's fine, because that does fit very nicely in chapter 3 on speaking and storytelling. However,
chapter 3, I love chapter 3.
Yes, chapter 3, that's your chapter. However, as they started to peel back that onion and allow themselves to really, really think about what they learned in this environment, they came to tears. We're talking heavyweight C-level executives crying on Zoom with me, because I'm crying too at this point. We're all crying.
Right.
Yeah. And so now many of them, after doing that interview, not really, some of them had a glimpse of the proposal, so they kind of knew where it was going. But seeing the finished work, they're like, oh my God, what we did not know, but we knew, and now we have language for.
Language, yes, that's it.
And one of them even said to me, I know it didn't need validating because it was valid to me, but you putting it in this work the way you did gives it even more credibility to folks who wouldn't have even thought of it, or maybe they had and they discounted it.
Yes.
You use science.
Yes.
Yes, sir, I did.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you went there. And, it was very important for me to really ask you about the intersection of the book and how people in the magical middle, because I so saw it when I read the book and when I'm thinking about the subject. Even when you actually told me about the idea a couple of years ago, I knew that people who were navigating this mid-stride journey would resonate so well with the book. And I will say that you talk about the chapter 3 storytelling. I was honored to present my story, and what you did for me, El Michelle, I would say, is that telling my story, it reinforced that everything that I do now, that I'm passionate about, that I feel that's my zone of genius, not necessarily because I say it, because I'm getting affirmation from the work that I do, whether it's speaking, hosting, this is my lane. It started, the seeds were planted at Cumming Street Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee. When I started those speeches for Youth and Young Adult Day, when I started those speeches for Men's Day, when I welcomed the visitors, which is featured in the book, of breaking down the word visitors in an acronym, that V is for the victory you're going to receive when you visit today. I is for the inspiration. S is for being the salvation. And when you put that in the book and I read it, and I'm like, you know what? This is great, because it was refreshing for me to always be grateful and thankful for the foundation, which is the Black church. Because without Cumming Street, without church in Brooklyn when I lived there for 10 years, without Eagles Nest Church here in Roswell, without Change Church that I attend here in Atlanta, without those institutions of being the original business school, I would not be sitting here having a great conversation with you today. So thank you.
You're welcome.
For what you did for me. I could talk about this all day long.
Do you mind if I connect a few more dots there?
Please connect the dots. I love connecting the dots.
Yeah. So it's one more reason for these people Gen X and even some of the cuspers and boomers to discover late in their magical middle
Mm-hmm.
how magical they actually are.
Ooh, here we go.
To me, that is the chef's kiss of it.
Love it.
They're able to look back on things. I've always said they're keys to your future and your past.
Yes.
Well, so many of us have been telling our story from the past
Right.
all along. I've told stories about me getting on the speaker circuit all of a sudden because people told me to do it. But
Yes.
that one little piece
Yes.
about filling in for the CEO or the chief communications officer, and then getting told that I ended up getting 25 million impressions from 45 minutes alone,
Yes.
and then really thinking about where that came from,
Right.
I discovered a whole new narrative that's embedded in me and threads so much of my experience, and even allowed me to pivot middle age. Gosh, I was 46 when I left AT&T,
Mm-hmm.
and discover a whole new world of publishing, of speaking,
Yes.
of helping people get to the C-suite. All of that happened
Yes.
in my magical middle.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. You definitely mastered that middle, and it so speaks to why I do what I do, and you are a perfect case study. Speaking of your story, Elle, that's one final question I always ask my guests, and I hate that we're getting to the end, but I can't wait to hear your answer. So, if there was a song that would play anytime you walk down the street or into a room that perfectly illustrates and captures your story, whether it's past, present, or future, what would that song be? What would be your own personal theme song?
LL Cool J. Mama said, knock you out.
Oh, see.
I'm going to knock you out.
Mm.
Mama said, knock you out.
Okay,
Exactly.
first of all, people who
Don't
know me
call
know
it a
that
comeback.
I've been here for years.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, people who know me know that LL is my favorite rapper.
Really?
No, he is LL Cool J. James Todd Smith is my GOAT. And he came up with the word GOAT. He came up with the acronym, by the way.
Yeah,
the
he
greatest of
did.
all time. Look it up. It was his album. It was before everybody started saying GOAT. LL Cool J came up with the acronym, by the way.
Yeah.
But so for you to say that, you just connected a dot with me.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is that your favorite? Why is that your personal thing?
Well, there are so many reasons why. If I was at AT&T and you'd ask me that question, what's your favorite, what's your comment, I would say it because that was my get in the zone call, song. Before I went on calls, meetings where I needed to be in my zone, I would blast that in my car and be like totally in it.
Yes.
But the other piece of it is, if you know me well, and if you read any of my books, my parents are all through the book. And one of the reasons is because in No Thanks, I even shared, my parents told me, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's mama's way to say, mama said, knock you out. Mama said, knock you out. I'm going to knock you out. And by the way, there's some call and response in that.
Yes, it
in
is.
that hip hop tune.
Well, look, we okay. See, we because we got to end this interview but you just opened up. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. So, Elle Michelle, please let everyone know. First of all, thank you so much for joining. Please let everyone
Thank you for having me.
Where, why, and they must. Where can they get this book if they haven't already? Just a few of you. Where can they pick up Call and Response?
They can pick it up anywhere they buy fine books. So the big box retailers, the indie stores, you can even get it at a Black bookstore if you want to. You get it at any of the online retailers.
Yes.
And that's anywhere in the language of English that they're selling it. So I had somebody ask me if they could get it in Brazil. They can.
Oh,
it won't be in Portuguese yet.
Okay.
You know, they may reorder that later on if there's a demand. But you can get it anywhere.
Okay.
The other thing you should know is the hub for all things call and response is on my website. It's lmichellesmith.com. It's 2 L's in Michelle. And then / call and response. Spell it all out.
Yep.
But there you're going to find how you can connect the dots for your organizations. So that, you know, if they're worried about, oh, but we don't talk about religion, there are explainer videos that map out the entire corporate leadership series There's even going to be, by the time this comes out, there's going to be a heart-centered leader assessment that you can take for absolutely free.
Love it.
And find out where you are on that scale, because that's the ultimate goal of this book, to make more heart-centered leaders like the ones in the book that grew up in the Black church.
Love it. Everyone, please make sure you listen. I'll put all that in the show notes. Please follow L. Michelle Smith. Go to her website. Follow her on IG. Follow her now and in the future. Get the assessment. Watch the documentary that's going to be coming. I'm sure I'm calling it out there. All that, when she wins her awards, when she gets her NAACP Image Award.
Name
all
it
that.
and claim it.
Claim it. Elle, it's been a blessing. It's been an honor. Thank you for joining me and our Gen X Amplify community.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrian.
Take care.